Why You Must Read English. Lily felt a familiar, tightening knot in her stomach every single time she even contemplated uttering a single word in English. Her thoughts raced, entangled in a desperate fear of imperfection. I don't want make mistake but I always why, she would lament silently to herself, a refrain of self-doubt that haunted her quiet apartment. The desire was strong, but the apprehension was stronger, keeping her words locked away. This constant struggle left her feeling isolated, disconnected from a larger, vibrant world she knew existed just beyond her linguistic reach. Simple conversations seemed monumental hurdles. Each missed opportunity to communicate chipped away at her confidence, fostering a deep-seated frustration that she desperately wanted to overcome, yet felt powerless against its grip. She understood, intellectually at least, the undeniable imperative of why you must read English, that transcended mere academic pursuit. It was not simply an optional skill but an essential gateway to countless opportunities in the modern, interconnected world, a crucial necessity. The professional landscape she envisioned, filled with exciting global collaborations and diverse projects, explicitly required advanced English proficiency. It felt like an invisible barrier, preventing her from reaching her full career potential and stepping onto a broader, more impactful stage that beckoned her ambition. Beyond the corporate realm, her deepest travel dreams, vivid mental postcards of bustling European markets and tranquil Asian temples, remained frustratingly out of reach. How could she navigate new cultures, interact with locals, or truly immerse herself without the ability to speak their common tongue, English? English, she realized, was far more than just a collection of words and grammar rules. It was a universal bridge. It promised to connect her not only to information and opportunities, but, more importantly, to people from every corner of the globe, fostering understanding and shared experiences across vast distances and diverse backgrounds. One evening, scrolling aimlessly through social media, a captivating, brightly colored thumbnail caught her eye. It was a short, punchy video promising a breakthrough. The title glowed with an almost irresistible allure, sparking a tiny flicker of hope she hadn't felt in a long time, drawing her in instantly. The video's bold promise: how to talk with anyone. Lily paused, intrigued. Could it truly be that simple? Her mind, usually riddled with doubt, felt a rare surge of curiosity. She clicked play, her fingers trembling slightly with a mix of skepticism and a desperate, underlying yearning for change. Its core message resonated deeply, surprisingly simple yet profoundly revolutionary for Lily. Focus on genuine connection, not on achieving grammatical perfection. The speaker emphasized that communication was about shared understanding, about bridging gaps, not about flawlessly structured sentences, a radical departure from her past anxieties. Initially, a wave of skepticism washed over her. It sounded too easy, almost like a magic trick. Years of language class frustrations had ingrained in her the belief that only flawless performance was acceptable. Could such a casual, seemingly unscientific approach genuinely make a difference in her rigid mindset? Yet, something within the video's genuine sincerity compelled her to listen, to truly consider its unconventional advice. She watched it again, then a third time, letting the words sink in, slowly dismantling her ingrained fears. A quiet resolve began to form. Perhaps, just perhaps, this time would be different for her. The speaker then delved into concrete strategies, detailing how to practice English daily, even in the complete absence of a conversation partner. These methods were surprisingly accessible, designed for solitary learners, promising progress without the pressure of immediate interpersonal judgment or performance anxiety. One suggestion particularly appealed to her: simply narrating her entire day as it unfolded in English. From waking up to brewing coffee, she would mentally articulate each action. It felt silly at first, like talking to herself, but it created a continuous flow of English thoughts and basic vocabulary. Another practical exercise involved describing ordinary objects around her apartment aloud, in detail. The old wooden chair, the pattern on her curtains, the book on her table, each became a prompt. This forced her to search for specific words and form coherent sentences, expanding her descriptive linguistic capabilities. These consistent internal monologues, though initially awkward, served a crucial purpose. They gradually started to get the words flowing, loosening the rigid grip of her tongue and mind. The mental block that had so long paralyzed her began to subtly, incrementally, dissolve under this persistent practice, word by word. She also began to pay closer attention to how people speak English in real-life contexts. She watched interviews, listened to podcasts, and even observed tourists in her city, not just for the words they used, but for the subtle nuances of their spoken communication. It wasn't merely about understanding the grammatical structure of their sentences. It was about internalizing the unspoken rhythm, the natural intonation, and the subtle inflections that gave meaning and emotion to their words. This deeper listening opened her ears to a new dimension of language. She started noticing the common, casual phrases, the idiomatic expressions that made conversations sound authentic and effortless. These were not typically found in textbooks but were the true markers of natural, fluid communication, making the language feel alive and far more approachable for her. Then came a profound realization, a critical component the video passionately advocated: why reading is so important. It explained that reading offered a unique, immersive pathway to linguistic acquisition, an often underestimated tool in the arsenal of an English learner. Lily remembered her old collection of English novels, beloved stories from her youth that now lay untouched, gathering dust on her bookshelf. A pang of regret mixed with renewed purpose stirred within her. She had neglected such a powerful resource for so long, right there within her reach. The video explained that consistent reading, even short passages, effortlessly built vocabulary. New words appeared in context, making their meaning clear and helping them stick in her memory far more effectively than rote memorization or endless vocabulary lists ever could achieve. Moreover, reading allowed her to absorb complex sentence structures almost unconsciously. Her brain, exposed repeatedly to well-formed sentences, began to naturally recognize and internalize grammatical patterns without needing to dissect them analytically, a form of intuitive learning. Reading became an act of linguistic osmosis. She wasn't just consuming stories. She was absorbing the very essence of the English language. This quiet, solitary activity became a powerful engine for her progress, shaping her understanding of both conscious and unconscious linguistic nuances. Armed with newfound strategies, she committed to her first bold, albeit private step. She decided to start talking at home. This was her safe space, a judgment-free zone where she could experiment with sounds and words without external pressure or fear of embarrassment. It felt incredibly awkward at first, standing in front of her bathroom mirror, attempting to hold a coherent conversation with her own reflection. Her voice sounded strange, her pronouncements clumsy, but she pushed through the initial discomfort, determined to persevere. She would describe the process of making her morning coffee, narrate the mundane chores of laundry or dishwashing, and even comment on the weather outside her window. These simple acts transformed everyday routines into dedicated language practice sessions, a continuous stream of words. Feeling silly was inevitable, a small price to pay for the incremental progress she was starting to feel. Each uttered sentence, no matter how imperfect, was a tiny victory, a step away from her self-imposed silence, fueling a quiet persistence that surprised even herself. This practice, however unconventional, was a crucial first step. It broke the mental barrier of speaking aloud, familiarizing her tongue with English sounds and rhythms. It built foundational confidence, proving to herself that she could produce English, even if only for her own ears. As she progressed, Lily actively sought out different ways of learning English, broadening her approach beyond solitary practice. She understood that a multifaceted strategy would yield the most comprehensive and sustainable results for her ongoing linguistic development. She began listening to English podcasts during her commute, focusing on topics she genuinely enjoyed. This immersed her in natural conversation, training her ears to discern different accents, speeds, and the subtle flow of spoken English, making passive learning highly engaging and enjoyable. Movies and TV shows watched with English subtitles initially, then without, became her entertainment in her classroom. She learned slang, cultural references, and observed nonverbal cues that accompanied speech, making the language come alive in a rich, contextual tapestry. Online forums dedicated to her hobbies provided a safe space for written English practice. She typed out her thoughts, asked questions, and engaged in discussions, refining her sentence construction and expanding her written vocabulary in a low-pressure, supportive environment. Each new method she integrated, whether listening, reading, writing, or speaking, contributed synergistically to her growing confidence. They reinforce one another, creating a virtuous cycle of learning where progress in one area positively impacted all the others, accelerating her overall fluency. Slowly but surely, her ingrained fear of making mistakes, that heavy burden she had carried for so long, began to chip away. The accumulation of small successes, the consistent exposure, and the growing self-assurance gradually eroded her linguistic anxieties, freeing her spirit. Then a lifeline appeared. A colleague, Tom, who was a native English speaker, casually offered to help her practice, noticing her efforts and quiet dedication. His kind, non-judgmental approach was exactly what she needed, a perfect catalyst for her next learning phase. Their shared objective became clear: mastering how to talk to people in pairs. They established a routine, a consistent, low-stakes environment for active, reciprocal conversation. It was a partnership built on mutual respect and a shared desire for improvement. They would meet weekly, perhaps for coffee or a quick lunch break, dedicating a specific time solely to their English conversations. Consistency, they both knew, was paramount, transforming sporadic practice into a predictable and reliable habit that fostered steady progress. Their discussions started simply, recounting their weekends, talking about current events, or sharing their favorite hobbies. The topics were always familiar and approachable, ensuring that the focus remained on communication rather than on complex, challenging vocabulary, building a solid foundation. Crucially, they made mistakes. Lots of them. Lily stumbled over words, mixed up tenses, and sometimes spoke in fragmented sentences. Tom, too, would occasionally simplify or clarify, but never with judgment, always with an encouraging smile and a patient ear. The most liberating aspect of their practice was that they laughed off every single error. Each misspoken word became a moment of shared amusement, deflating the pressure and transforming potential embarrassment into light-hearted, memorable learning experiences, reinforcing their bond. This direct, interpersonal interaction proved to be incredibly invaluable. It simulated real-world conversations, forcing Lily to think on her feet, to respond spontaneously, and to adapt to the unpredictable flow of natural dialogue, refining her immediate linguistic recall and fluency. The biggest and most transformative shift occurred when Lily learned how to think and speak directly in English. This was the ultimate breakthrough, moving beyond the laborious process of internal translation that had previously hindered her conversational speed and spontaneity. Initially, she would form thoughts in her native language, then mentally translate them word for word into English before speaking. This clunky, time-consuming process made her conversations slow and disjointed, a constant struggle against the clock of natural dialogue. Now she forced herself to form entire concepts, ideas, and responses directly in English, bypassing the translation step altogether. It was like rerouting a major highway, creating a direct linguistic pathway from thought to utterance, streamlining her communication process significantly. The initial attempts at this direct thinking were challenging, requiring immense mental effort and concentration. Her brain felt like it was rewiring itself, struggling against years of ingrained habits, pushing her cognitive limits in a wholly new and demanding way for her. But as she persisted, the process became smoother, more intuitive, and remarkably liberating. Words flowed more freely, sentences formed more naturally, and conversations became effortless, no longer feeling like a strenuous mental exercise but a natural expression of her thoughts. The old, paralyzing fear of making mistakes, that relentless tormentor, began to genuinely fade into the background, losing its power over her. She realized that the occasional stumble was insignificant compared to the joy and utility of authentic communication and connection. She now understood with profound clarity that mistakes were not failures to be avoided at all costs, but rather invaluable steps in the continuous learning process. Each error provided direct feedback, a signpost guiding her toward greater accuracy and fluency, propelling her forward. They were merely temporary missteps, markers of progress, not signs of inadequacy. This shift in perspective completely transformed her attitude toward speaking, making her bolder, more experimental, and far less self-conscious in her linguistic endeavors and daily interactions. Her confidence, once fragile and easily shattered, soared to new, exhilarating heights. She embraced every opportunity to speak, to learn, to connect, no longer shrinking from linguistic challenges but actively seeking them out, eager to push her own evolving boundaries further. Conversations became fluid, genuinely enjoyable exchanges rather than anxiety-ridden performances. She found herself engaging in spontaneous discussions, expressing complex ideas, and even using humor, a level of comfort she once thought utterly unattainable for herself. Lily's world, once constrained by linguistic barriers, expanded dramatically in every conceivable dimension. New friendships blossomed, professional opportunities emerged, and her personal horizons broadened in ways she had never dared to imagine were truly possible for her. She connected effortlessly with people from diverse backgrounds online, participating in lively discussions and sharing experiences across continents. The Internet, once a source of passive consumption, transformed into a vibrant global town square for her to actively participate in and explore. Emboldened by her new abilities, she began meticulously planning an international trip, researching destinations, booking accommodations, and even practicing specific phrases for different cultural contexts. The thought of confidently navigating a foreign country filled her with pure excitement and anticipation. At work, she volunteered to deliver a small but significant presentation entirely in English, a task that would have caused her utter panic just months prior. She spoke clearly, confidently, and articulately, astounding both herself and her colleagues with her newfound linguistic prowess. Her journey had been challenging, marked by moments of frustration and doubt, but ultimately, it proved incredibly rewarding. Lily had not only learned a language, she had unlocked her voice, built profound confidence, and discovered a boundless world of connection, proving anything is possible.